Folk tanking, ladies and gentlemen. Nick Folk walks it off with the 56-yarder as the Jets earn their third win. We'll talk about what this means for the Jets draft position, some encouraging signs from this game, as well as other concerns. But let's dissect and celebrate the Jets' third win of the season here on Rich Sports Talk. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Rich Sports Talk. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss any of our latest videos or any of our live streams. If you're joining us in the program, make sure to drop in a chat, give us your thoughts and comments on the game, super chat to jump to the front of the line. And if you can't make the regular live streams on YouTube, you can check us out wherever podcasts are available. You can reach us Rich Sports Talks. And again, super chat to jump to the front of the line. And of course, if you would like to make a donation so we can continue to make great content on this channel. And again, if you were a fan of the tank, this probably wasn't a game you enjoyed. Nick Folk said Folk the tank as he kicked a 56-yard game winner in this game. As the Jets improved to go 3-9 on the season, I will go over where they rank in Tankathon right now. I'll get to my thoughts on tanking, but here's the thing. I said this after the Ravens game, that looking at the Jets' schedule over the next 4 games, I thought this team, the way they were playing, how they're still playing hard, I thought they were going to go 2-2. I think they're going to beat the Saints. I'd like them to beat the Dolphins, although the Dolphins are somehow winning games now. I don't know how. And even the Jaguars. I think that the Jets are going to likely finish with 4 wins, 5 at the most, probably 4 or 5 wins. And we'll talk about tanking and why it's different and my thoughts on the process and also why this is vastly different than 2020. But I want to look at this last stretch of the season. The biggest thing I want to look for is coaching because this staff is coming back. It is very clear. And I wanted to see, does this staff look better? And again, for the most part, I thought it was a good offensive game plan. Again, I'd like to see Breece Hall featured more in the passing game, but that's, just personally me. I thought that this game, though, was very interesting because a lot of this came down to the players. I thought the positioning for especially the offense was really good. This defense, again, I don't think it's that creative. I think Steve Wilks will be a sacrificial lamb at the end of the season. But overall, I look at the big 3, Chris Banjo, Tanner Engstrom, and I look at Aaron Glenn. And what I saw from each of them was very encouraging today. Engstrom, I thought, had good game plans. There was a lot of drops. There's a lot of mixed executions on the offense today. But overall, I thought he had a good game plan, good concepts. Guys are getting open on a lot of plays, but they couldn't execute. We'll go play by play a little bit more in this game. I thought Chris Banjo's special teams won this game. They forced the big turnover that led to the first touchdown. They ended up winning this game. Isaiah Williams looks incredible. This was a guy who the first week or two we saw him looked incredibly slow. Didn't look like he was going to have much of an impact on the special teams. But, man, I'll tell you, he has looked very, very good over the last couple of games, and especially the huge return today. But the big one was Aaron Glenn. And I saw signs today that were encouraging from Aaron Glenn. Does he still have his warts? Yes. But there were certain moments in this game that I thought that he did a very good job and showing progress that he's understanding the situations around him. I look at the third quarter. There was that 4th and 1 that they could have gone for, but he's keeping an eye out. He's watching the scoreboard, and he sees Breece get past the first down, throws the challenge flag. It was a good challenge to get a first down, not risk something going bad on 4th down, and keeping that awareness up. I thought it was very good, too, when I looked at how – again, some people will say McCrary Ball should have been benched, but again, I don't think the Jets had enough linebackers to do that. But I thought that it was very interesting with the good clock management. After the Tyrod Taylor touchdown, where you saw the Jets tie the game at 24, Falcons come out, they run with Bijan, gets only 1 yard. Glenn smartly calls timeout to save time, forces the Falcons to pass. And again, I still think that was a fumble by Cousins as he's fallen to the ground, but that's just me. Now, granted, it didn't go well for the Jets on the next drive. The sack basically killed that drive to start it because then they were going to be behind the 8 ball and you didn't want to take a safety. But then you get the great punt from McNamara. Defense comes out and holds again. And look, I got to give credit to this defense. While I don't think they had a great game, especially against Bijan Robinson, I do think that they held when they needed to at the end. I would have liked to see him force the freaking interception. But anyways, I think that was a very difficult situation. And look, even setting up for the game winner, the offside was definitely a bad look. And again, the penalties weren't perfect. But I did like what Aaron Glenn was doing in that situation where, again, I know the broadcast like, well, what are they doing? Why are they running plays? If you notice, there was still enough time in the game. Aaron Glenn, I think, made the decision with Tanner Engstrom or both of them. And again, we'll get some of their post-game comments. I believe what they said was this. Look, this is going to be a tough field goal. Nick Folk's already missed from this range already. If we trot out the field goal kickers now, I believe there's like 15 or 16 seconds. If we miss from here, all the Falcons have to do is gain probably 10 yards to take a shot and win the game. So if we at least milk out the clock, run a couple plays, but intentionally throw the ball out, because it was clear the Jets were not trying to complete passes. Let's milk the clock down to a point where Folk is going to kick the game winner. If he misses, we go to overtime and we take our chances there. So while the broadcast, I don't think understood the situation, was looking at it a bit differently, that's how I interpreted it. And I do think that the Jets did a very good job handling what was a very tricky situation. And again, it's tough that they had the offsides. I thought Armand Menbu had his roughest game of the week. You could tell that they were attacking him on the right side of the line with Jeff Ulbrich. But overall, again, 9 penalties for 59 yards. I thought the dumbest one was the McCrary ball one. Like that to me, if that cost the Jets this game, I talk about accountability, and I know that they're thin at linebacker, but I would have made an example. Who knows? Maybe he will get made an example, because that to me was such a turning point potentially in this game. Because think about the sequence. It's a tie ball game. Jets just tied the game. And look, it's frustrating because I would have, me personally, in that sequence after the Isaiah Williams return, I would have gone on 4th down for the touchdown or at least get the first down. But I kind of just felt like they made the call on this one. Like, look, let's just tie the game. We've had 2 calls on this drive that should have worked. You had the first play where Mason Taylor was wide open in front of Tyrod Taylor, and he doesn't even give him the ball. And then you have the Mechie, who, again, had a really rough game today. There's no question about it. Multiple drops, including the one where he probably could have scored a touchdown or at least gone with inside the 5. But it was a frustrating game. I think the Jets just want to take the points there just to make sure they had it. But think about the next sequence. They come down. Falcons have returned it out. They get a big hit from Michael, who's the former backup for the Falcons. First play of that drive, Quincy Williams, who, again, is playing out of his mind, and if there's any way to keep Quincy Williams, this front office has to try to do it. Makes an unbelievable play, bangs through the hole, tackles Bijan Robinson behind the line. It's going to be 2nd down and 11 or 2nd and 12. You're firing on auxiliaries, and then McCrary ball. And look, and even on that play, it was going to be even better because the Falcons were flagged for tripping on the play. They were flagged for tripping. But after the play, McCrary ball decides to spasm on the ground as a celebration instead of just, giving a fist or shouting something. And even to the point where Jonathan Vilma's like, what in God's name is he doing? And here's the thing, McCrary ball, you didn't make the play. That was Quincy. So not only did you take away from Quincy, not only did you take away from a potential penalty, but your dumb as a penalty basically cost the Jets an opportunity, because then it's like, well, we have to offset the penalties, so it's going to be a 1st and 10. Then that resets the drive. Falcons then the next play get a big one, and then they start going down the field. So this to me was a game where it was frustrating. But the big things I took away from them are this. I'm seeing progress from key players on this team. It does seem like the focal point of Breece, despite not passing the ball, is Breece in this offense. It's clear they're trying to get these receivers the football. And look, A.D. Mitchell had a career day. 52-yard touchdown, over 100 yards, 8 catches today. You see why the Jets took a shot on him. And yes, Mechie has been the flashier of the two, has been the more productive one. He had a rough day today, but A.D. Mitchell showed you when he's running right what he can do in this league. And when you have a guy like Garrett Wilson who likes to operate in the middle of the field, I really would love to see what A.D. Mitchell alongside Garrett would look like in this offense. But you saw why A.D. Mitchell is an incredibly talented player, why they wanted him in the Sauce Gardner trade, which now all of a sudden Sauce Gardner gets injured today with a calf injury. It looks serious, could potentially be an Achilles. Daniel Jones is now playing with a banged up, what is it, a hairline fracture in his hip. So he's going to be on pins and needles the rest of the season. All of a sudden, the Colts, who were basically running away with everything, are now starting to drop down the draft order, now 26. And I think they're going to be in a tough spot. And all of a sudden, it's looking a lot different. And again, as of this recording, again, let's get to some of your comments in a second. Super chat, jump to the front of the line. We'll break down some more key plays in this game. Let me give you my thoughts on tanking. Again, it's part of the title, Folk the Tank. I don't believe in tanking for multiple reasons. Number one, it doesn't happen. Teams can try to tank, but this to me is different than most years. To me, the one season where tanking made sense and where Jet fans really wanted to tank was the Trevor Lawrence draft. Now, again, we look back in retrospect, it doesn't seem like the best thing ever, but the tank that season was very important for multiple reasons. Number one, you had, quote, a generational prospect at a quarterback, which we had not seen in years, who is the clear number one quarterback. Number two, and I think this really gets forgotten, the Jets fans wanted this team to fail because of the vitriol they had against Adam Gase. They wanted Adam Gase out after year one, and the Jets brought him back. And there was this sense that if Adam Gase somehow gets the number 2 or 3 pick, he's going to convince the powers that be that he can be the one to develop that quarterback and should get a third year. So that to me it was more about getting Adam Gase out than necessarily the quarterback. This staff, we want them to succeed because we don't want to go through another rebuild, another refreshing of staff. We've had enough of that. And like I've said too, the Jets to me, the way they're playing better, how they've been more buttoned up in weeks, I felt like, especially when I looked at their schedule, I felt especially this stretch of 4 games, they could go 2-2, maybe 3-1. I don't think the Jaguars are that good. Dolphins, again, I don't love, but I'd love to be them just to have a division win. And you look at the Saints, are not that great. The big thing if you're the Jets is this. You play out the stretch. And look, you can't worry about tanking because my philosophy is you finish the season where you finish it and you go from there. And right now, if I look at the NFL, and this is the current standings for Tankathon as of this recording on Sunday, right before 5 o'clock. Tennessee's picking number 1. They are 1-11. You have New Orleans picking number 2. They are 2-10. You have the Giants picking, they are 2-10, but they play on Monday Night Football against the Patriots, probably will lose. You have Vegas, who's 2-9. They've lost 5 in a row. You have Cleveland that lost today. They're 3-9. They just jumped the Jets. Jets right now would be picking 6 at 3-9 in Arizona. To me, the Jets are going to finish top 5 or 6 in picks at the end of the day. I just think that the Giants are going to win a couple games down the stretch. I think Cleveland, if Shedeur can play well. But the thing that the Jets you really want to root for is the following. You want Tennessee to be the number 1 pick. And I think there's a good chance they're likely going to be because they look dead. If Tennessee's picking number 1, they drafted their quarterback last year. Now, again, maybe they could want a quarterback. It's not written in stone that you can't take a quarterback back-to-back years. I mean, we saw it with Arizona with Kyler Murray. But I get the sense that they have so few pieces and that they want to build around Cam Ward. They would go to the highest bidder. And if you're the Jets and you can offer them multiple ones, if you truly believe there's a franchise quarterback, you can move up in this draft. You really can. And I think that's the big thing to keep in mind on. And look, There's a chance, too, that the Jets go through this evaluation process and go, maybe there's 2 or 3 franchise quarterbacks that we really like, or we don't really love any of these quarterbacks. So I just want to weigh on the tanking because I know that there's going to be a portion of Jet fans, and I will probably see them in my chat and probably in the live stream. And again, if you want to jump to the super chat, jump to the front of the line to tell me why the tanking works in the NFL or why Jet fans should be rooting for that, just super chat, jump to the front of the line. Let me know what you think. But let's get to some of your comments right now. As again, it seems like, my friends, friends always call you in the middle of the show. They never call you earlier in the day or when you so that's funny. But let's get to your chats. Super chat, jumping to the front of the line. Best specials in the league, Mr. Vaughn. I happen to agree with you. I take that. Another year where it takes away from the number 1 pick. Look, the Jets, I really don't think the Jets are going to end up with the number 1 pick, Kev. Like I've said, I think they're going to win 3 or 4 games. I don't think Tennessee's going to win another game. The most they win is 2. And you weren't passing them. So I like Mechie. They will pair well with Garrett. Let's see. AD Mitchell and Mechie are making a case. They're making a case that they're going to have a role on this team. And like I've been saying, I don't think they're going to be a bona fide number 2. I still think the Jets are going to add a number 2 in the draft or free agency or a trade for a veteran. But they're showing you that Mechie can be that inside route runner. He can go on the inside and be your slot. AD Mitchell showing you he can be the guy that takes the top off the defense. And look, I think one of the big headlines today was what Darren Muji and this front office did. They had a couple key actives. Tyler Barron, who was a draft pick, wasn't active. And Arian Smith was a healthy scratch today for Alan Lazard. So I think Arian Smith right now is a project player. And we said this when he came out. And the big thing to me is your goal for next season should be Arian Smith comes into camp fighting for a roster spot or is your 6th receiver to develop. Because it's clear he needs a lot of polish on his game. And if you have guys like Mechie and AD in front of him and Mechie, then I do think that is very important. I don't want to tank. Looking at past draft, I see Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes all not going number 1. You don't know who's elite, and you don't know until they play on Sunday. I think that's a perfect point. Keep it simple. I don't want to, I get what you're saying. And look, there could be 3 or 4 quarterbacks that are really good in this class. And the biggest thing is you have to put them in a system. And from what I'm seeing, you have good pass protection. You have a good offensive line. You have some interesting pieces. Again, I'd like to see Mason Taylor featured more often in this offense. I'd like to see Breece Hall featured more in this passing offense. And look, I would like to see maybe Isaiah Davis be featured more in this passing offense because you look right now, it does seem like the Jets, Braylon Allen, they're taking it slowly, and he's probably not going to play this year. So I'm always great with the wordplay, Dangerous. I don't know what you're talking about. Again, I'm always like I'm like the punniest Jet content creator on here. I mean, come on. As much as I want Mendoza, the consolation prize of Simpson or more will be fine. Look, it's about getting a quarterback in the right system. And look, at the end of the day, you got to develop the kid, and you got to develop him correctly. And I think that the last couple of regimes, they tried to they were hoping Sam Darnold and Zach Wilson would be the saviors, that they would be so talented that they could overcome average to below average offensive line, below average weapons. And most of the league can't do that. You need talent to help nurture a quarterback. I mean, I would think about it. I don't think that's a bad idea. I think Cam Ward's a talented kid. I don't think that's a bad idea. Again, Super Chat, jump to the front of the line, your comments. I hope they stay put versus trading up in the draft. I don't think and look, that's your opinion. I'm going to talk to some Jets experts. I've been doing a lot of evaluation. Look, this is a very interesting, and I see really a question I'm going to get to as well. I think this is a very interesting quarterback draft. There's no clear to me number 1. And the thing I've been kind of struggling with is I really like Ty Simpson, but the playing only 1 year does really concern me. The other thing I look at too in this draft that also really concerns me is I look at Fernando Mendoza, I think has the best floor in this draft. I think he can be a solid NFL quarterback. I think he can be a good NFL quarterback. The problem I run into is this. Will he be good enough to overcome great in this league? Because let's also not sugarcoat it. The AFC has a ton of talented quarterbacks. You look at the NFC, you can get by with good, above average quarterback play and get into the playoffs. Not as likely in the AFC. You need to find a kid who you feel confident can go toe-to-toe with Josh Allen. A kid that can go toe-to-toe with Drake May. A kid that can go toe-to-toe with Joe Burrow. A kid that can go toe-to-toe with Lamar Jackson in 2 to 3 seasons. That can go toe-to-toe in a game with Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert. If you don't feel you have that guy or he has that ceiling, to me, it's very difficult to draft. And look, I agree with you. I also want them, they need to use they need to look at, and I implore the Jets offense, steal from your competition. Look at how Bijan was used today. That's how you should be using Brees. Steal some concepts, steal some plays from that team, and keep it simple, RC, with a really good brain teaser. What do you do with your second first-round pick next year? Now, to keep it simple, just help me clarify, because there's a lot of first-round picks. I'm assuming you mean the Colts pick for the 2026 draft, correct? Not the future 2 first-round picks in addition to the Jets pick in the 2027 draft, where the Jets will have the better of the Cowboys/Bears pick and also an additional Colts pick. So again, I'm assuming, and tell me if I'm wrong, that you are referring to the Colts pick in the 2026 draft. Okay. I don't really have an answer. I know that's a cop-out, but here's the thing. If you love a kid in this draft for a quarterback and you have to trade up for him, you use that as capital. If you're comfortable staying and taking a quarterback where they might fall, again, I think it's best position available. I personally, if it was me, would try to pick the best defensive player, because don't forget you have 2 twos. You're going to have your 2 and you're going to have the Cowboys 2. There's a lot of really great receivers. And when I look at the receivers, you can get a really great one on day 2 in this upcoming draft. I would look at trying to get one of the best defensive players in this draft. They get your quarterback with the first one, but then go out and get, with your second one, go out and get your best defensive player. Because there's a lot of really good defensive players in this draft. And the thing that happens too, which we tend to forget, is defensive players, pass rushers, again, I think tend to go higher. But defensive players, especially in the first round or 2, because there's so much offense in this league and how much it's predicated on being able to score points. I think a lot of this comes down to what defensive player could potentially fall. Because to me, there are a lot of really great defensive players in this draft. I mean, I think we've seen, some of the better ones. So I'm just trying to pull up my prospect list, because again, I want to make sure I'm fully up to date with it. Like, look, I don't think like Arvell Reese will be available, but like, let's say the Colts are early 20s. Okay. If they're in the early 20s, could a talented player like a David Bailey from Texas Tech be there? He's a good edge. I also look too at, in that range, could you maybe get a Caden McDonald, a good interior defensive tackle? I like CJ Allen, the linebacker from Georgia, because again, I think the Jets still need some talent. The linebacker, Sonny Styles, again, big linebacker from Ohio State, 6'4", 240. I mean, the Jets linebacker core feels like it needs some size. And I'm just looking in that range. I think there's some interesting edge, like Zion Young, the edge from Missouri. Like, I also feel like he wants a bigger edge. So, I mean, the real wild card in this draft, and again, I know a certain person that's going to love this, is Caleb Downs. Because to me, Caleb Downs is one of these great debates we tend to have every couple of years, and he's this year's Kyle Hamilton. where when you look at the tape and you look at the prospect, he is clearly one of the top players in this entire draft. He is, if you were to separate them in a room, one of the top 3 players in this NFL draft. The problem is he plays a position that's not a high need. So let me play a scenario for you. Is it worth it for the Jets? They're sitting there. Let's say the Colts are picking 24. Kyle Hamilton, again, I might be wrong, but if memory serves, I believe he was the 11th or 12th pick in his draft. So let's say we get outside the top 10. Let's say Baltimore, who has Kyle Hamilton, although in this scenario, maybe they'll just draft him and let Kyle Hamilton go to free agent. But let's play a scenario. Actually, I don't think Baltimore's going to be there. Who's likely going to be around the teens? It's so murky. Let's say Cincinnati finishes with the 11th pick. And again, they need defense. But is it worth it to trade up and maybe trade your late second round pick to go up and get him if you feel he's going to come in and be an instant impact and a Pro Bowl type talent on your team? I mean, that is going to be a big debate in this draft. So again, I think that's a great question. Let's get to the back some of your questions. Super chat to jump to the front of the line. Everyone always wants to trade up as if it's a video game. It's just lazy without foresight thinking. It shows smarts adapting to the board. Look, you have to also look at that right now, too. And again, thank you, Tony, for the compliment. Again, like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our latest. Again, celebrating a Jets victory, folking the tank. Okay, Mr. Vaughn with a lot. I think we won the Michael Carter, Quinnen, and Sauce trades. Cheaply getting Mechie and AD was brilliant. I loved it because they were addressing the young talent in a unique way. Again, I think that they're trying to supercharge this rebuild. Instead of just having rookies come in, you have young players that you can see have good tape in the NFL and that can prove they can play. I would say the Michael Carter deal they've won because I haven't seen Michael Carter make that much an impact, and the Eagles are really struggling right now. And again, they moved up in the draft order, and they got a young player who I think has a lot of upside. Sauce trade, I think they won as well because, again, Sauce is a really great and talented corner. He's going to take out your number one. But when you're getting paid that type of money, you want that number one to force turnovers. You want like a Dion. You want like a Patrick Surtain that's not only going to cover your best receiver, but force turnovers. And even in Indy, he isn't doing that. The one is Quinnen. Look, let's be frank. Quinnen, since going to Dallas, has been amazing. And look, playing next to Kenny Clark, those two in the middle of any defense is going to cause a lot of problems. But when you look at the situation that Quinnen wasn't coming back, requested a trade, didn't want to be a part of another long rebuild, I get it. I think that the Jets did brilliant. And I have to give this front office and I have to give Quinnen Williams a lot of credit because Quinnen Williams could have easily let it leak that he wanted to be traded at the trade deadline. And I don't think the Jets would have gotten anything near what they got. And to me, the biggest thing with the Quinnen trade is next year's, the 2027 first rounder. Because the Jets are playing really good odds there because they're going to get the better of the Bears or the Cowboys pick. And look, we've seen teams, this happen all the time. What if next year Caleb Williams gets nicked up early in the season and they're like the Commanders and they just can't get it going and have a bad season? Then the Jets have a good draft pick from the Bears. What if the Cowboys, what if Dak, who's getting older, week 3, has a severe injury, is out the majority of the season? Again, the Cowboys are playing with backup quarterbacks and they have like a 6-11, 7-10 season. All of a sudden their pick is in the middle of the first round. And you look at that. I think this is a good question, Mr. Vaughn. Again, Super Chat should jump to the front of the line. I don't know. Part of the thing with this new regime is they are looking to add certain pieces. Now, I would keep McDonald because the Jets don't really have a great pass rush. And even today, I thought he had some nice bursts, although who would have – if you played the money line, could you imagine how much – if you did this parlay, Jets sacks today were just Tony Adams and Michael Clemens, how much money you would have won. Jesus. Jermaine is the odd one because I love Jermaine's attitude. I love his ability on the field. But the thing this year is he's been good against the run. He struggled in pass rushing, but you're kind of wondering how much is that the Achilles. And it's another thing, too, where I always look at it and say, don't forget, they weren't drafted by Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji. They weren't drafted. And if the Jets, like, let's play a hypothetical, like a pass rusher better in this upcoming draft, maybe they'll move one of them. Like, I think every option is on the table. And Jermaine clearly wants to be here. I think he's a good player, but I do think you're going to have to make some sort of decision on those players. So, again, I would try to keep both. Again, they have a ton of money. I would extend Brees. I think Brees, it seems like they've had a sit down with Brees. He seems like they basically said, look, the offense is going to go through the rest of the season. And I think they've lived up to their word. Again, if I'm Brees, I'd say, hey, throw me the football more. But anyways, hit that like button and subscribe. I would do anything. Again, they have the transition tag they can use on him. I'm not letting Brees walk out of the building. That's just the way I look at it. You can't let him. I do think they're going to fire Glenn at the end of the season. I don't think so. Again, we have to keep in mind with Mozzie, it's interesting because I think they took a dart throw. Again, don't forget he was a first-round talent. But then a week later, they signed Saunders, and Saunders was playing today. It's clear they really like Juwan. It's clear they like Harrison Phillips. I think Mozzie's a guy who they'll keep around, will hopefully work in their program. I doubt, unless injuries, he gets activated the rest of the season. And I'm curious to see. I think what's going to happen is the Jets will keep him through the offseason program. Again, he's under contract. I think they're going to have him go through training camp. And basically, at the end of the day, I think what is going to happen is he's going to come into camp, compete for a D-tackle position. If he works and gels in the system, he makes this roster. If not, the Jets move on from him. And again, he was basically a dart throw in the – like he was the cherry on top of that trade. He wasn't the main course. He wasn't the ice cream or the whipped cream. Those are the draft picks. He was the cherry. And again, you could remove a cherry from a sundae. It still makes a really good sundae. You know, the cherry is the extra. Again, hit that like, subscribe. Make sure to get your comments in. Players come back from Achilles are usually very, and that's the tricky part, though. And that's the hard thing with the evaluation. You're going, is it because of the Achilles, or is it because he's basically, again, I do think it is something very interesting too. And look, you have to remember with this team too. You look at the last 5 games, and I think this is very important. The Jets have won 3 of the last 5. I know that seems unbelievable. It's true. Look at the teams that they started 0-7. They hung in there with the Patriots Ravens, who again are probably playoff teams. And look, I think that the coaching staff is showing signs that they can work. They don't look completely lost like earlier in the season. I think there is a lot to say about that. And again, I do think it is important to figure out how to win these games, because the problems we've seen in the past, the Jets weren't able to hold on defense. They weren't able to get off the field like they did on defense. They weren't able to find ways to win. They found ways to lose. In the last couple of weeks, they've been finding ways to win. They found ways to win against Cincinnati. They found ways to win against Cleveland. They found ways to win today. And again, I know they're not playing great teams. The Jets are not a good team. I understand that. But I do think it is important to see where they were at the start of the season and where they are now. And don't forget, I mean, we're talking about them winning games without arguably what we thought were 2 of their top 3 or 4 players to start the season in Sauce. Well, actually 3 of the 4, if you think about it, because Garrett's been hurt. You have Sauce get traded. You have Quinning get traded. And they're still holding their own. I do think that is something very important to remember. And again, there's certain things you want to see cleaned up. The penalties were bad, 9 for 59 today. Mets, you want to see more efficient on the drops. But look, 7 of 16 on 3rd down today. They made on the 1 4th down play. Look, they were outgained by the Falcons, but they were able to hold their own. They were able to figure out a way to win the football game. And to me, that's very important. And the big thing is the Jets, they need to change the culture. What have we said the last 15? It's been the culture's been bad. The culture's been bad. You know, sometimes like with this culture, you have to see that you have to have massive turnover. And look, just since the start of the season, no team has made more trades than the New York Jets. So they're saying we're not good enough and we're going to have roster turnover. And I think that having that self-awareness is important. Also said having that self-awareness too, to realize you made mistakes. The thing that I always got on Joe Douglas was this. It just felt like once the season started, that was the roster. That was the roster. They weren't going to make a lot of it, especially the last 2 years with Aaron Rodgers. Felt like they weren't going to make any moves. And it was maddening because when Aaron Rodgers went down that season, you just were sitting there just screaming at the void, it felt like. Please, Joe Douglas, sign any veteran backup just so we have a fail-safe because we know Zach Wilson isn't going to work. Just get a veteran quarterback. Anyone. Sign someone, anyone off the street that we feel like if Zach Wilson is horrendous, which he was, or gets hurt, we have a plan. And it just felt like, oh, nothing I can do. The roster's set. Last year when the Jets kicking situation was horrendous, Greg Zuerlein, nothing I can do. So I look at Darren Muji. Felt he didn't address the D tackle position, does it through trades. Need to get bigger and physical in the slot. They got a bigger slot corner. They felt they need to get more cap space and draft picks. They move on from Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams. So I do think that it's positive too, where some of the players that you see out there will be very interesting. You know, folks bailed. I don't think it was necessarily about. So I talked about this earlier, Mr. M. Vaughn, and I actually gave praise to Aaron Glenn because one of the big things I took away in this episode in this game was this. I feel the coaching staff is getting better. I think Chris Banjo has been elite on special teams, but I actually thought Aaron Glenn had a great challenge in the third quarter. I thought they made some really good decisions. So what happened was this. I believe they were trying to get, because again, they had about 20 seconds. So you could get a play, run it down, clock it. You had Nick Folk miss from that range earlier. My thought was this. They're going to try to get one more play, try to get it to under 50 yards for the field goal. They have the bad penalty. So now you're in a situation where, okay, if we don't get it or if we go backwards, it's going to be worse. But the big thing is time. So the Jets didn't have any timeouts. So I think a lot of people were just thinking, oh, just run Nick Folk onto the field. But here was the problem with that. If memory serves, I believe there's about 17 or 18 seconds. So if Folk goes out there, and again, he already missed from this range. If he goes out there and misses, the Falcons will basically get the ball back on the midfield logo and just have to run a play to get into field goal range. So what Aaron Glenn, I think, decided in that moment was, okay, I don't want to risk the offense losing yards, but I also need to get rid of the clock. So I'm going to run 2 or 3 plays, and I'm going to tell Tyrod, no matter what, throw it out, and tell my receivers on the outside, get to the sideline so you're in range of the sideline so we can say it looks like they're at least attempting. The Jets basically threw the ball out of bounds, just saying we're killing clock. And I thought that actually was very, very smart. I thought that was a very smart decision because if Nick Folk misses that field goal, there's time for the Falcons to get in range and kick their own. But at least in this scenario, the worst case scenario is Folk misses, we get overtime. So I think that was very – he's not coming back, dude. No way. Look, I don't think he would have, Kev, because, again, they would have been in overtime. Now, again, depending on overtime would go. I think that the last couple plays were actually smart because they were killing clock. They didn't want to get the Falcons. So they try Folk out there with 19 or 18 seconds. He misses. Okay, there's 15 seconds on the clock. Falcons can run a play, get it about 10 extra yards, clock it, and then have an attempt for a game-winning field goal. I think we would have killed them more for that. Like, well, why did you send Nick Folk out with so much time? They're really, well, I think John Simpson didn't move on that one. I think there was a miscommunication on that one because Myers clearly didn't snap the football when everyone else did. But look, they were able to win the game, and overall, they were able to win this game. Some post-game comments. Adonai Mitchell said he found out he was getting traded by the Colts while he was watching film with Daniel Jones. They were watching Falcons film, said came full circle today when he scored a touchdown. Breece Hall said he was frustrated with the offensive operation at the end of the games. Guys got to know where they're at, what the objective is, and what they're doing. I feel like we could have been better for Tyrod. Said his feeling when watching Nick Folk kick the field goal. Hopefully he saves our ass. So again, the hard part too is you still have a very young team, and I think especially the offensive line. Armand Membu, who again I think should be considered up for Rookie of the Year. He won't because he's a tackle. I don't get why, but this was his roughest game. I think you saw him have difficulty with Leonard Floyd, who's a very twitchy edge rusher, and it felt like there was a time or two where Armand got the false starts because he was trying to almost get that extra step a little bit, or he's anticipating that quick rush. He's like, I got to kick. And, you know, I think I still love him at tackle. I just think, again, he was a rookie. And look, Breece Hall, like, again, is a veteran. You have a lot of moving pieces right now. You have a very young offensive line. You have a rookie basically at tight end. You have A.D. Mitchell, who is a third-year player. I mean, this is a very young team. And it's ironic that the two biggest plays in this game came from their oldest players, Tyrod Taylor scrambling for the touchdown and Nick Folk with the game winner. So Breece Hall said he felt like a decoy on offense today. I knew we were going to air it out because they were hanging their hat on stopping the run game. So I was playing decoy, watching everyone else. So I was like, hopefully we win. But again, I still think you need to get involved in the passing game. I would almost give more carries to Isaiah Davis, but I would allow basically Breece Hall to get more touches. And, you know, I have to give Connor Rogers a lot of credit. And again, there is a divide between us watching the games who are football fans who understand football and coaches. And I remember watching Badlands again. If they make a lot of great Jets content, highly recommend checking them out. And again, he's great on SNY's post game. He made an interesting comment on Badlands this week, and it made me really think. He's like, so we keep saying get Breece Hall more involved in the passing game because, again, it was off the Ravens' performance. We had, 74 yards receiving? And he made a great point. He said, we have gone now through multiple coaching offensive coordinators with LaFleur, with Hackett, and now here at Tanner Engstrom. We've gone through three, maybe four, but at least three offensive coordinators with Breece Hall. And we all say the same thing. He should be more involved in the passing game. Now, again, I don't think Nathaniel Hackett is great, so I'm kind of moving him. But we've had two offensive coordinators who seem like they understand the offense, that seem like they have good play designs. For whatever reason, don't view him as a receiver. Now, again, I agree with Mr. Mellon from earlier. We need to use him more like Bijan Robinson, but I do think it's clear that they're trying to spread the field out a little bit, get these guys going. And again, one of the things too, if you can get Mechie, who had again a rough day, but if you can get Mechie and A.D. Mitchell in defense to respect those two and back off a little bit, it not only opens up Breece in the running game, but I do think it opens up the screen game for him. But again, he's someone that we see when the ball is in space, he can do a lot of great things. And again, I'm not exactly sure how many targets he had, but I know he had only 2 catches for 8 yards. But, I mean, look, I thought the offense spread around a lot. Breece only had 2 targets, actually. But John Mechie, 8 targets, 4 catches, a couple drops. Adonai Mitchell was the focal point. 12 targets today, a touchdown, 12.8 yard. Longest was 52, 102 yards catching. So it is very clear what they think. And look, I think some of the young kids had good games. I thought Malachi Moore had a good day. Isaiah Oliver, I thought some interesting plays. But, I mean, just Sir Taylor with horrible tackling on that last Falcons touchdown. And I just find it so funny the Jets had 2 sacks. They came from 2 of the most vice players on the team. Again, I just thought that was very funny. But look, I still think the Jets are going to win a couple games this year. Some more post-game comments from this game as well. Again, another player who had a great game was Quantez Stiggers. I mean, I think hot take, Quantez Stiggers should be a Pro Bowler as a special teamer. I mean, recovered the muff punt. He's been excellent on gunning. I mean, one of the key plays, and again, it doesn't get talked about a lot, was the McNamara punt out of the end zone. The Jets had that horrendous drive. You feel the Jets are going to have to start. The Falcons are basically starting the midfield logo, but McNamara, who's been fantastic, 50-yard punt. But the big play on that wasn't the punt. It was Quantez Stigger just getting to the returner, dragging him down right away. No yards, no return. I mean, that's a big play because even if you get 5 or 6 yards, it doesn't seem like a lot, but just gives you more breathing room. It gives you more room to play with. So I just thought that was an undersung play of the game, and he had a great quote after the game. Stiggers, who recovered the Buffalo punt, says this game meant a lot to him because the Falcons, quote, gave him the cold shoulder at a college all-star game and said this was personal. So, of course, it's funny, the youth movement and the two players with the biggest impact today were the 41-year-old kicker and the 37-year-old kicker. So, I mean, look, let's also say it too. Again, Super Chat, jump to the front of the line. Get your comments. We're celebrating this win today. Again, we haven't done a lot of these. But again, Super Chat to jump to the front of the line as well. I agree. Isaiah Davis needs to be more as well. I don't think he's criticizing the OC. Again, he was being used as a decoy today. I think he wants to be more involved in the passing game. But again, it's also, too, like you have him so involved in the offense, he actually needs some rest. But again, I want to see him more involved in the passing game. I think that's pretty clear. So again, involving the number one pick, I have to check this one more time because I do think it is very important. So coming into today, and again, the Jets also broke some big streaks too. The Jets had 10 consecutive losses when they scored the first points of the game. So they end that streak, thank God, because again, the Jets, it felt like the last couple of years was so hard to just basically score any points. The fact that they've scored first and can't win those games, it was so frustrating. I'm trying to look at the, I remember seeing it earlier. I have it somewhere in my notes. Here it is. This is a big one for draft position. The Jets had a 15% chance to get the first round pick. If they lost the game, it would have been 22%. And if they win, it drops to 5%. So, and look, I don't think Tennessee's winning more than 2 games. I felt the Jets are going to get at least 4 wins, maybe 5. And look, even like people are like, oh, they needed a tank, they needed a loss. It would have been 22%. And the hard part is I see the Jets weirdly in a better position than some of the other teams. I think New Orleans is completely lost. I think Tennessee's completely lost. The Giants seem like a complete mess. The Vegas seems like a complete mess. Even Cleveland, I find it funny too because I remember everyone last week, they should draft the Shedeur. They should draft the Shedeur. He was 11 of 20 and 64 of his 100-something yards came on the one screenplay. It was like the Justin Fields play too. So again, and you saw what San Francisco did today. I mean, he just did not look comfortable out there as well. So Kev, good question. So let's take a look at the Jets' upcoming schedule because again, I know a lot of you guys are interested. Again, Super Chat, jump to the front of the line, give us your thoughts. And again, I also am thinking about doing a game ball section. If you want me to do my top 3 game balls for the Jets, I will do that. I mean, for me, my top 3 game balls today are pretty simple. I think it goes to Nick Folk with the great kick to end this game. Quantez Stiggers had an unbelievable day on special teams. And Adonai Mitchell, 8 catches, 102 yards. So if I had to give out game balls, those would be my game balls for this. So let's look at the upcoming Jets schedule because I do think there are some interesting aspects to it. So the Jets next Sunday will play the Dolphins at home. Now, again, the Dolphins have won another game. I don't know how they're winning games. That's the game I'd like to win because I want to win at least one AFC East game. I think the Jets did not look good in Miami. It's clear that was a bad Justin Fields game. I don't think the Dolphins are a good team. I don't love their coach. Again, I think they're kind of in this weird purgatory right now. If you look at the Dolphins, all of a sudden, like they've won a couple games. like I remember when the Jets played in Miami, my friends there were telling me how basically they were fine playing about firing the coach and firing the GM, and they got off to that horrible start, but now they've won they've won 3 of the last 4. They beat the bad Commanders in overtime. They beat Buffalo. I don't know how they did that. And then they beat the Falcons. So I'd like to see them. But again, I mean, they beat the Saints. I mean, I'd like to see, but now you look at the Dolphins, they're a 4-7 football team. So if they get to 7 or 6 wins, do you keep the head coach? I mean, they've already relieved the GM. Like that'll be fascinating. But let's get to some more of your Jets. I just lost the Jets schedule. Hold on one second. Again, if you want to get your comments or questions in, super chats down the front of the line. Then the Jets will go on the road for 2 weeks. December 14th, they'll be in Jacksonville, who I don't think is a good team. Then they'll be in New Orleans on the 21st. And the last 2 games are fascinating because they're AFC East. It's the Patriots will be the last home game on the 28th, and the Bills will be the last game on the 4th. So those 2 games are interesting. And again, sorry I hit the mic right there, but for those of you on our podcast. So those 2 games are going to be very interesting. I don't think home field will be wrapped up by week 17, but we've seen weirder. I mean, and even if the Patriots had wrapped up, I don't think Vrabel's going to have them sit for 2 weeks and then with a bye. But that, to me, could be a very interesting game. The Bills game now, all of a sudden, I think that the Bills are going to be playing for their playoff lives because, let's face it, they're 7-4 right now. They're probably going to be wanting to play for wild card seeding as well because just look around the AFC. You have the Ravens who are at 6-6. Steelers are at 6-5. You know, the Bengals now, Joe Burrow, at 4-8. Could they run the table, make it? I mean, they almost did it last year. That would be fascinating. But the Bills are 7-4. Jaguars and Colts again. Jaguars again. I brought that. Now that I look at, they've won 3 in a row. I don't know why. I just feel like I don't know. I don't feel like they're that good of a football team, but they're probably going to be a loss. I think the Jets beat the Saints, and then the real turning point is going to be the Dolphins. Can that be the 5th win of the season? But you have the Texans who are 7-5, who've won 4 in a row. You have the Broncos at 9-2, Chargers at 7-4, Chiefs at 6. I mean, this is a very, very deep AFC. Like, the sad part is the Jets are in the minority. Like, it feels like everyone's pretty much competing except the following teams: the Titans, Raiders, Browns, Bengals will throw in there for fun, Jets and Dolphins. So those are like the only 4 teams. But I don't know. I mean, Dolphins have also now won 3 games. So the Dolphins are 5-7. I can't believe that. 3 in a row. But part of the thing, too, and why I do think it'll be interesting with this matchup, it's going to be in New York, cold weather, bad weather. I mean, Dolphins, like, again, like, you look at their wins. They've won 1 game on the road, and that 1 win was in New Orleans, who's a dome team. Or no, was that? I think the problem is I know the 1 international game. I'm not sure if they were an away team for that. Before their wins are coming home. I mean, it's clear they love playing in Miami, but when that Corvette offense has to go rear-wheel drive in the snow, let's see how that handles out. Again, super chat to jump to the front of the line, Mr. Vaughn. I should have just looked at you because you even said, like, they play the Dolphins next week. And look, I think that's going to be a fascinating matchup. They've played obviously a lot better, but I just would love them to win. And look, I thought the first Miami game, like, it felt like if they had the quarterback a little bit differently, it could have been closer. I just look at the Dolphins, and they're just a funny team. Again, super chat, jump to the front of the line. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our latest live streams. I mean, they beat the Saints, who are not a good team. Again, you look today, Tua was 12 of 23, 157 yards and a pick. The big thing for me is I think they've relied on the running game. Akinine had 134 yards. Can they slow the running game? Look, Bijan Robinson had a great game today, but look, I think he's the best running back in the NFL. I think the Jets can slow Akinine. And look, can they get their first pick against the Dolphins, please? Just get that first pick. And look, too, Dolphins almost blew it today, too. Like, they had a 19-8 fourth quarter lead. They almost blew it with 11-17 to go. They tried to get a 2-point conversion for Shuck. And look, they're playing Tyler Shuck at quarterback. against the Dolphins. So, and their one win I was talking about on the road was the international game. So my apologies about that. But outside of the Bills game, like I don't, I don't love their stats. I don't think they're a great football team. And, you know, I just there's such a weird enigma right now, the Dolphins. They really are. So, I mean, their last win before today was an 16-13 overtime game. And even Tua, like you look at his stats, like even in the last 2 wins, he's thrown 2 touchdowns. And even today didn't throw a touchdown. I mean, he's thrown 2 touchdowns, 3 picks against Washington, 173, threw like 150. They're not winning because he's throwing for 250 yards, 300 yards. I mean, they're winning because of the run game, and their defense has been a lot better. So, I also just want to beat Mike McDaniel. I cannot stand that head coach. And look, maybe part of it in a weird way is we want them to win, so they'll keep Mike McDaniel. We want to lose, so they keep Mike McDaniel. But I just want them to beat, I just really want them to beat that team. I just don't like the Dolphins. The Patriots I hate the Patriots. I hate, I hate like the Bills, but like to me, they're like the one team in the Jets weight class that they should be able to, I really think, beat. And I just want to see them beat Mike McDaniel. Look, I thought they should have won that Monday night game. But again, it was early in the season. I think this is a great opportunity now. So again, super chat comments get to the front of the line. But look, I think that this is a huge win for the Jets. This is all about building culture. And my big thing, and I keep going back to this, is this. For people that want the tank, and look, I know there's a lot of you, and I get it. You want the better draft pick, but you can't control it at this point. I always view it as you let the chips fall where they fall, and you go from there. The Jets are going to be playing hard. The Jets, the big thing you want, if you are truly rooting for any sort of tank, you want them, the Titans or the Giants, in a weird way to finish number 1. Because the Giants are moving on from Jackson Dart. I don't think the Titans are moving on from Cam Ward. You want a team that doesn't really need a quarterback and that wants draft picks. And I do think that is very important, because if the Jets love a quarterback and can move up, and this is the reason I gave them the Sauce Gardner trade and the Quinn, if they hit on that quarterback, it doesn't matter what you gave up. And at the end of the day, even if they give up multiple picks, they still have a ton of draft capital because of the trades they've made and the assets they've acquired. A.D. Mitchell, after the game, said one thing on his mind during the first touchdown of his career is finish. Said he would only have had one a year ago against first the Jets, was stopped at the one. Then obviously there was the mishap with the Colts earlier. So it's nice that he was finally able to get his first opportunity. A.D. Mitchell also stressed that opportunities are earned this career day as a result of that. And look, I understand there's going to be a portion of the Jet fan that's disappointed, and I get it. You want to have great draft picks, but you also need a healthy environment for whoever the quarterback is coming in. In the Jets, when they brought in the quarterback, it's been wrong. They've had bad personnel. They haven't been able to figure out ways to win games. They've had bad coaching. You want to eliminate those variables for wherever the quarterback is. And like I also said, too, like after last week, I think the Jets, the way they're playing, the way their schedule is, they're going to win 4 or 5 games. Who knows? Maybe this is the last win of the season. That could certainly be the case as well. But you want them to play hard, that they're learning and that they're getting better. And look, it was ugly today. It wasn't a pretty game. But I'm seeing progress from these young players. I'm seeing progress from this coaching staff. And that, to me, is very important. Because, like it or not, they're going to be drafting this quarterback. Like it or not, they're going to be the ones making the key decisions about building this quarterback. And the other thing, too, is I look at this class. Part of the reason I'm not going to talk about quarterbacks, I'm actually going to have Dom C on. I'm hoping for next Tuesday. We're going to talk a lot of draft. And I'm going to talk a lot of draft right now, but about players, not quarterback. And the big thing I keep saying about the draft is this. We, A, don't know who's coming out. B, we don't know how they're going to look in the playoff. And we also don't know the impact of NIL. Like, just think of it this way. Months ago, we would have said Arch Manning would have been the bona fide number one pick. And if he came out, there's still a chance. But it seems from all indications, Arch is staying at Texas. We don't know who's coming in or out. Drew Aller, 12 months ago, we were thinking maybe he could sneak in to be a first-round pick in last year's draft. He stayed at school. There's so many variables. Until a kid has declared and said, I'm definitively going to the NFL draft and not going back to school, you have to get, because Dante Moore, there's a chance he goes back to school. There's a chance, outside of Mendoza, there's a lot of different players that can go different places. And certain guys too, like Ty Simpson. I really like Ty Simpson, but am I concerned he's only played 1 year? Yes. Am I concerned that, I think he needs to sit for a little bit? Yes. I mean, you have to do kind of what the Giants were doing. If the kid outshines in the preseason and looks ready before and earns the job like Jackson Dart did, great. But you can't rush him. I mean, look, what if Dante Moore goes back? Lenore Sellers. I mean, those are two of the top 4 kids in this quarterback class. And there's a good chance they go back to school. I mean, and Mendoza, like, I really like Mendoza a lot. But the thing that I kind of keep going back to is this is his ceiling. Because for a comparison, and this might not be the best comparison because, again, he's bigger at 6'5", 225. And I think he's got a little bit better athleticism than this pro guy. Is someone I was just talking about, and that's Tua. When Tua came out, I thought very much like Mendoza that he was a quarterback that could win in the league if he had great pieces around him and he could get you to the playoffs. I felt like he was a good enough quarterback. He beat bad teams, make you somewhat competitive, but really in the big blockbuster showdowns, you felt like you didn't have the arsenal. And right now for Mendoza, that's kind of what I feel like. And you kind of see it a bit too with the Lions. I mean, for all the comparisons with Jared Goff. Jared Goff, like, it feels like there's certain games like where the Lions, are kind of limited. And you kind of saw that on Thanksgiving a little bit too. Like, there are limitations to what that offense can do with him as the quarterback. And I do think Mendoza would make the Jets a better team. I think Mendoza would be a starter. He'd be an upgrade. But at the end of the day, I don't want to get here in 2 or 3 years and say the following, which is, I like Mendoza. He's a good quarterback, but he's not good enough to overcome Josh Allen. He's not good enough to overcome Drake May. He's not good enough to overcome Joe Burrow. He's not good enough to overcome Lamar Jackson on a regular basis. He's not good enough to overcome Patrick Mahomes or a Justin Herbert or even a Bo Nix. And what number did I just mention for quarterbacks? Oh, that's right, 7 quarterbacks. How many playoff spots are there? Well, 7. See where I'm going with this? So look, I still like Mendoza a lot. I still think this coaching staff is showing a lot. And look, the big things I want to see, can you get stuff out of these players? Can they develop? You're seeing flashes from John Mechie, and even today, you're seeing flashes from Jawan Briggs. You're seeing flashes from Malachi Moore. You're seeing flashes from A.D. Mitchell today. You're seeing flashes from a good young offensive line. I mean, there's a lot of pieces here, and there is a good foundation that I think is being laid for eventually the quarterback. Because let's be honest, too, today, Tyrod Taylor played well, but Tyrod Taylor is not elevating the Jets. Tyrod Taylor is just basically the life ring that's keeping this Jets offense afloat, because he's a quarterback that can run an NFL offense, but you still see the issues with him. And the big thing, and I keep going back to this, Tim, we don't know how the season is going to end. There's still a lot of football to be played with all these teams. There's still at least 5 games for all these teams. My big thing is don't stress about the draft pick. Well, let's stress about when we get to the end of the season. Creep in is all of a sudden the Colts, who are on, Fire have lost 2 in a row. Their quarterback is playing with a fractured hip, and the player that they traded for at the deadline is in a walking boot and has this calf injury, and I believe might have an Achilles injury. Again, it hasn't been disclosed yet, but I just look at Indy, and all of a sudden, you look at how good this AFC is. There a scenario where the Colts don't make the playoffs? I mean, I'm just saying, I'm just going to pull up this schedule. Here's the Colts' remaining games. Next week, they're playing the Jaguars in a division matchup for first. Then they go to at Seattle. That'll be an easy one. Then they go home against the 49ers. Then they're home against the Jaguars in another division matchup. And then they're playing the Texans. Like, you look at the next 5 games for the Colts, even if they split the Jaguars, I mean, do they finish with 9 wins? Is there a scenario where that happens? I'm just saying, like, is there a scenario where we thought this pick could be in the late 20s? Happens all of a sudden. That helps your trade value when you're trying to move up, because it's a lot easier to convince Tennessee or the Giants, hey, do you want the 5th pick and the 30th pick, or the 5th and the 20, and we'll throw in a 2? I mean, that really does change the dynamic. And look, the culture kind of falling apart, and that will definitely be very interesting too. And look, we went from like about a month and a half ago thinking Aaron Glenn could be a one and done, that they should not even get a chance to develop this team. And look, let's call it for what it is. The first 7 games were rough. I think Aaron Glenn still needs to learn how to deal with the media. I think he's getting better. I think the big thing too is, do we see this team improve, and do they figure out how to win games? And look, they're figuring out how to win games. I'm seeing encouraging signs for the coaching staff, except Steve Wilkes. I don't think he's going to make it past this season. But overall, I'm seeing encouraging signs. I'm seeing growth. I'm seeing development. Look, is it perfect? No. The Jets do not have a legitimate starting quarterback right now. Breece Hall tweeting for the Jets videos for Aaron Glenn. Just pulling this up really quick. Aaron Glenn, these guys never quit. They get bashed. Everyone on this team gets bashed for everything, and it's okay, because it's exactly what we're trying to do. We're going to continue to do is just block out all the noise and keep focused straight on that vision that we've got, that we're trying to build as this team. So, and look, I do think you're seeing a team, like, again, this team doesn't have a lot to play for. I mean, this is, something that basically, again, it does seem like Breece Hall smile on the postseason too, but the Jets right now, again, this season is about building a foundation. And I think they are building a very good foundation right now. And you can at least see the foundation. Even with Saleh in the previous regimes, it never felt like they fully built the foundation. Like, they didn't really have everything set. And look, this team, they've also, I think, invested in certain areas of this team, which I think are very smart. They invested heavily in the special teams, and they invested heavily in the special teams coaching. And I think that has helped the Jets win games. And look, we can look back at week 1 and say special teams cost them the game. But they also moved on from Xavier Gipson. They've added to the special teams room. And I think the Jets have one of the better special teams in the NFL, And look, this Falcons defense is a lot better with Jeff Ulbrich, but you look at Adonai Mitchell as one of 3 receivers to have a 100-yard receiving performance against the Falcons defense. The other were Tet McMillan and Demario Douglas. So, look, the Jets win this game. I think the Jaguar game is going to be tough, but do I think the Dolphins is a winnable game? Yes, despite how weird they've been. And I also think the Saints is a winnable game. I think if you're worried about draft position, what I will say is this. I think the Jets are going to finish with 4 or 5 wins. Maybe with 3, but 4 or 5 wins. I think you see a lot of these bad teams will be playing each other and will eat each other. I think the Jets safely will be a top 6 pick, probably a top 5. I think Cleveland will likely win another game with Shadur pulling something out. Vegas is weird. I think the Giants with Jackson Dart can win a couple. Vegas, I have no idea. Again, they just fired Chip Kelly, but I mean, we'll see. I mean, a lot of this comes down to who they're playing, who they're resting. And week 18 is a real wild card because, as we know, we see teams basically treat that as it's almost a preseason game now because especially if a team gets locked up or a team gets eliminated, it changes the dynamic. And we saw with the Dolphins last year. They walked into MetLife thinking they had a shot. By halftime, they knew their season was dead. They basically quit. They basically I think they were on the sidelines probably reserving times for Cancun. But look, I think it's encouraging. And super chat jump to the front of the line. Again, we'll be having a lot more great content as we progress through the season. Lots of great draft content. So make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss any of that great content throughout the offseason. We'll have more great collaborations with Jet content creators. But once again, the New York Jets have won their third game of the season. They say Folk the tank as Nick Folk bangs home a 56-yarder. And overall, look, it was ugly. There's things that this team still needs to improve on. There's still a lot of holes. But the big thing is the rest of the season. Are they building a foundation, and are we seeing progress? And I think the answer today was a definitive yes. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this episode of Rich Sports Talk. We come live after every single Jets game this season. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of that. Check us out on YouTube for more other videos. If you have ideas for future videos, let me know. I think I have a draft special I'm kicking up this year, which, again, I think you will be very interested in as well. But make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our latest videos. And you want to take us on the go? You can check us out where the Rich Sports Talk podcast is available. Again, Jets, I'm so befuddled by the Jets' performance. I lost the ability to speak the English language for a brief moment just there. But again, love you guys as always. You guys help make the show fantastic. Great comments in the comment section as always. And if you have questions you want to ask me after the live stream, go ahead and put it in the comment section. Thank you, everyone, for joining us in this episode of Rich Sports Talk. We will see you next time.